Well, howdy there, Internet people. It's Beau again. So today, we're going to talk about Trump, Chicago, and how political opposition is not rebellion. On Thursday, an appeals court handed Trump a major loss when it upheld a federal judge's order temporarily blocking the Trump administration from deploying hundreds of National Guard troops into Chicago. The appeals court said, quote, "Political opposition is not rebellion." The three-judge panel rejecting Trump's argument was unanimous in their decision. 2 of 3 judges were appointed by Republicans. Rovner by former President George H.W. Bush, Hamilton by Obama, and St. Eve was appointed by, Trump. We're going to go over their decision because it will probably end up being a standard, and it reinforces a lot of the general guidelines we've talked about on the channel. The panel said that even when substantially deferring to Trump's claim, quote, "We conclude that the district court's factual findings at this preliminary stage were not clearly erroneous, and that the facts do not justify the president's actions in Illinois." The court also noted that Trump has not been, quote, "unable with the regular forces to execute the laws of the United States." As we've discussed in the videos going over how the laws governing the deployment of troops within the U.S. work, the inability of the courts to function is generally held as a clear line, and the courts are still functioning. The panel flatly rejected Trump's framing of events, saying, quote, "A protest does not become a rebellion merely because the protesters advocate for myriad legal or policy changes, are well organized, call for significant changes to the structure of the U.S. government, use civil disobedience as a form of protest, or exercise their Second Amendment right to carry firearms as the law currently allows. Nor does a protest become a rebellion merely because of sporadic and isolated incidents of unlawful activity, or even violence committed by rogue participants in the protest. Such conduct exceeds the scope of the First Amendment, of course, and law enforcement has apprehended the perpetrators accordingly. But because rebellions at least use deliberate, organized violence to resist governmental authority, the problematic incidents in this record clearly fall within the considerable daylight between protected speech and rebellion." Further, they wrote, quote, "The spirited, sustained, and occasionally violent actions of demonstrators and protests of the federal government's immigration policies and actions, without more, does not give rise to a danger of rebellion against the government's authority." So, what do we have with the decision? We have a panel of judges who are clearly following the established lines that have long kept the military from being used against Americans. None of the court's decisions is really new. It's the same guidelines we've gone over before, but most of the decisions establishing those guidelines were, let's just call them dated. It's nice to see them reinforced. At the end, the quote that matters the most is, quote, "The administration remains barred from deploying the National Guard of the United States within Illinois." Anyway, it's just a thought. Y'all have a good day.